Good evening. Tonight we are going to go over Chapter 15, the Civil War from 1860 to 1865. The first question that we are going to answer is describe what was Crittenden's compromise and what did you think it was unsuccessful? Well, John Crittenden did not want the South to secede from the Union, and he wanted basically to allow the Constitution to make slavery legal. He also wanted to have slavery extended beyond Missouri all the way to the Pacific Ocean. That was against the Missouri Compromise. He wanted North slavery was illegal in the South. He also proposed an amendment that would stop Congress from getting rid of slavery anywhere where it already existed and not interfere with interstate slave trade. The reason why this is unsuccessful because the South wanted the slavery to grow beyond the 36-degree 30 line, and the North wanted to get rid of slavery completely. Number 2, why did secession in waves with the Deep South acting first? Well, first of all, the Deep South was vehemently against slavery, vehemently believed that slavery was essential for the livelihood in the South. That was their main workforce. That's how they were able to produce cotton. The Confederate Constitution, it would ensure that slavery would remain legal, and it also provided that each state had its right to conduct the way they wanted to conduct. With the election of Abraham Lincoln, because he did not agree with slavery, this motivated the states to secede from the Union. However, there were many states that preferred the U.S. Constitution rather than the Confederate Constitution. So, as time, in order to maintain the livelihood, basically people did not want to get rid of their slaves in the South. Could the difference between the North and South have been worked out in the late 1860s and 1861? Could war have been avoided? Provide evidence to support your answer. The differences between the North and South, I don't think could have been worked out. War could not have been avoided. During the President Lincoln's inaugural address, he maintained that he wanted to maintain federal power. A great example of this, because Southerners rejected both the Missouri Compromise and the Crittenden Compromise, they wanted slavery to expand to the North and other regions. And other Southern states, as being Confederate, they wanted to maintain control of their states the way they wanted to see fit without federal jurisdiction. But, again, Lincoln vowed that he wanted to maintain property and keep the United States intact. Now, explain the strengths and weaknesses for both the Union and the Confederacy, and why did the North prevail in the Civil War, and what might have turned the tide of the war against the Civil War. For the strengths, I would say the North, they had more financial backing to support the war. They also had a larger population due to the immigration from Europe. Their industry was much stronger. They had much more manufactured plants, like they manufactured ammo. They also had access to the railroads. The biggest disadvantage for them was that because most of the battles were being fought in the South, they had to leave their home. And a lot of the soldiers pretty much got tired. They have no time to take refuge. And so a lot of them, therefore, battle fatigue. Also, because their supplies were up north, their supplies were not as ready to them as possible. So the other thing is, because they were not from the South, they were vulnerable to, they did not know the terrain like the South. Now, the strengths for the South, because most of the battles occurred there, the soldiers were familiar with the terrain. However, with their weakness, their population was much smaller. The Northern naval blockade, it prevented them from being able to export cotton to England and France. Also, their currency really did not place as much value compared to the North. So they actually suffered from hyperinflation, where their current Confederate dollar really did not hold mustard. And I think this is what might have turned the tide, the war against the North. Again, because they were not familiar with the terrain, they did not know the people, they were foreigners. So I think that was the biggest deficit, plus, again, the supplies. Now, if I was in charge of the Confederate war effort, what strategies would you have pursued? Conversely, if you had to devise a Union strategy, what would you propose? One thing, if I was in charge of the Confederate war effort, I would have tried to take on, first of all, try to take upon the railroad, get more enhanced with the transportation. Also, I would build up the industry instead of them having to be reliant on the North or England. They could actually produce their own ammunition. I would also try to drum up allies. Maybe really, I know they were trying to drum up allies between the English and the French, but I think I would have really encouraged that. But unfortunately, France and England really didn't want to get part of this. For the Union strategy, I would have scouted the area before attacking. I would have also made sure that there were plenty of supplies to support the troops. Overall, in the end, because the Northern's resources and the amount of soldiers outnumbered the troops in the South, so they could engage in many fronts of war, I think this helped them win the war. Because of this, the Union, for example, the Union was able to control the Mississippi River, which the Mississippi River was the main transport to get supplies from like Memphis down to New Orleans and out to the Atlantic Ocean. Why in 1863 was considered a turning point of the Civil War? Starting January 1st, Abraham Lincoln gave the South an ultimatum. Basically, if you don't rejoin the Union and give up your slaves, they would keep on fighting until they're defeated. And once they were defeated, all the slaves would be set free. In the 1863, when Abraham issued the Emancipation Proclamation, this also showed him that slaves needed to be free. Also, during this time, when the North gained control of the Mississippi River, the South could not get, as I said, their goods from from north to south, so they were unable to gain a profit, and they didn't have the means to be able to fight the way they needed to fight. Also, with dealing with the Union, when the Union defeated the South, and when the Union defeated the battles with Vicksburg and because the Union were able to defeat the South on the same day in big battles such as Vicksburg and Gettysburg, it pretty much left the South very, very vulnerable, and this was the turning point. What role did women and Africans play in the war? Women's were able to, basically, they were in charge of being able to take care of and nurse the soldiers when they were injured. They were also in charge of inspecting the soldiers' quarters. They were cooking for the soldiers. Also, when their husbands were away, they were responsible for manning the businesses and the farms to make sure that they would still be able to live. They were also responsible for raising money for the war profits. And the other thing is, women were also used as spies, and some women actually disguised themselves as men so they could fight at war. Now, with the African Americans, they also got to fight in the Civil War, especially in the North. However, not as when they got paid, they didn't get paid as much as the white people. So also when those who escaped to the North, when they came to the North, they were free and they did not have to follow the federal fugitive state laws. Also, part of their duties, they were also known as cleaning up the moving the dead bodies. I would say probably in the South in particular. Why did many people oppose Lincoln's re-election in 1864? Many people thought that Abraham Lincoln was basically becoming a dictator. He initiated so much executive orders that many people, just thought he really was uncaring. As for people in the North who did not favor the Emancipation Proclamation, so for example, New York, a lot of them wanted slavery. And in fact, there was talk that New York wanted to secede from the Union. Now, on the other hand, the abolitionists, they felt that Lincoln was too soft and did not make a firm stand that slavery was wrong. And last but not least, what was Sherman's march to the sea and what was its impact? He was very, very brutal and very, very ruthless. He went against command instead of where the North were not able to take over civilian properties. His march came through. He devoured everything. He destroyed all property, looting. He killed people. He killed livestock. Before then, the North soldiers would respect civilian properties, but when he came through, he had he didn't care. He was just thinking about defeat. In fact, one of his battles, I think, was I can't remember, but he once said that, this is for you. This is a Christmas present for you, Abraham Lincoln. So he was very ruthless and he did not care.